Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Senior Living Foresight. I want to start by saying Merry Christmas. I just realized I should have put a Christmas hat on or something. I am so excited. I get to have a conversation with my friend Denise Boudreau. We are going to talk about how to create cultures where everybody loves coming to work every single day, where you have no trouble holding on to your staff, where you have no trouble recruiting. I know that's a big idea, but we think you can do that. But first, this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Well, Denise, how are you? Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. It's good to be here.
I am so glad. We haven't done this for a long time. You've been, of
We
course,
have
on
not.
2 or 3 times, and that's really good. And I'm gonna now you changed since we were on before we started. You changed the look at level of your head, so I have to make a little adjustment so I don't look way taller than you. Let's actually start. I'd like to have you do just for those. It's hard to imagine that anybody doesn't already know you, know who you are, but just in case, let's talk about who you are and what your passion is.
Sure. That's a big question, who I am. The work side, the life side, or a little bit of everything.
You can use any or all of it, whatever you want. You can have, we got 25 minutes or 30 minutes. If you want to use all of it talking about who you are, that's cool.
That'd be no help to anybody. So I live in Key West, Florida, where people vacation. I've been here for a year, and it was part of my intentional part of my life to just kind of lower stress in my life, and it's a hard place to be stressed. So I've lived here for about a year, and before that I have always been a New Yorker, New Jersey, in New York originally, lived in New Jersey. And when I was up north, I have really spent my whole life and career in the field of senior living. I was a dietary aide, I was a nursing assistant, and I was a nursing home and assisted living administrator for 17 years before starting my business, Drive, which March, can you believe it, Steve, is going to be 11 years. It's going to be. And we work with organizations on organizational culture. We measure organizational culture so you can take a strategic approach to improve it, which improves recruitment and retention. So that's me in a nutshell.
Cool. So virtually every senior living organization in the country has high turnover and not enough staff. And there seems to be sort of this sense that it can't really be any better. It's just the way of the world. In fact, you and I were at a conference together a few weeks ago, and you gave a terrific talk. And after the talk, I got to talking to a couple of senior living C-suite leaders who sort of took the position that what you talked about sounds like it's great in theory, but in practice, people are so messy and they're so negative and they're so difficult, and everybody wants what they want, so that it can't really be done. And so I'd just like to start with talking about, in from your perspective, what is actually possible today?
So it is possible to have full staff. There are organizations that are doing it. It is possible to have turnover numbers that are a hell of a lot better than what our field has right now. And I'm of the position that said if you approach anything in life saying, well, that's the nature of the beast, it is what it is, right? What would you possibly accomplish, right? If you wanted to lose weight and you just said, well, I'm the weight I am and it's really hard to lose weight, I'm never going to lose weight. You probably won't, right? And I think it's the same approach to all of this, right? So if what we've been doing has not been working, and spoiler alert, it hasn't been working. Before the staffing crisis, right? Before the staffing crisis, we've just accepted, and I've had people use these words with me, things like it's the nature of the beast, right? I mean, that's sort of the underlying message of what those leaders said to you, right? It's just we got what we got, right? And so I would say, okay, if that's our quote unquote reality, what do we do with it? And what else can we be looking at doing differently? And I'm incredibly excited. And part of my presentation that day that you saw was this sense of that people now more than ever want purpose in their work. And so, what field more than senior living has more purpose in it, right? Built right into it. We don't have to try to create purpose, it's built right into what we do. We don't do a very good job of sharing that outside of our field. And even when people come to work for us, we often stand in the way of them living that purpose that brings them into our field. So that's sort of my take on that, and I'm happy to.
So I'm gonna ask you to expand a little bit on
Yeah.
this idea that employers make it really hard for people to live purpose. But one of the things I want to say, sort of add in color, is I remember being at a conference where there were a panel of senior living leaders, and one of the leaders, they were having culture, and this was way before the pandemic, so this was in the old normal where the turnover was still terrible, right? Mostly people could stay fully staffed, but the turnover was terrible. And this leader said, well, maybe we just need to accept that 50% turnover or 60% turnover is kind of what you talked about is the norm. And I was horrified by it. So what is it? Let's actually, I hate to go negative, but I think we have to kind of start there. What is it that employers, that senior living operators are doing wrong?
Um, where to start? No, there's lots of things they're doing right. Okay. So there's lots of things that they're doing right. And I really truly believe that most people are going into this wanting to do
That's
good,
right.
that they're wanting to do good. I think the thing that people get wrong probably the most is the strategic approach to retention, or a strategic approach really to recruitment, and that people get excited about stuff. People like, what program should I use to give out gifts to my staff? Right? That's very tangible. How much should my bonus be that I give staff? Very tangible. And so what those are easy things to do. What's the harder thing to do is, how do we ensure there's respect in our organization? So in the research that we do at Drive, we measure culture. One of the basics that we know in organizations from the research that we've done is respect has to be present in organizations. So that is a little harder, isn't it? In theory, than implementing this recognition program that just you automatically get to pick prizes from, right? So
So
yeah. Yeah.
So I was just going to say, I love this idea of respect. I love it. I think it's really important. But I think if we were to go out and poll virtually every operator, they would tell you they all respect their staff.
Yes.
So what's the
Yes.
problem?
Yes. And that they have respect, right? We have respect in the organization. But guess what? The problem in this person that's saying we have respect is the top person who everybody respects. So it's sort of like a very biased opinion, right? So when you ask sort of what can people do differently, I would say, first of all, realize your perspective, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's different from other people's perspectives in the organization, right? So if you're in a leadership position, that respect in a lot of ways is built into that role. So one of the simple things when I ask staff, what does respect mean to you? Take a guess what staff say to me. How would you know if you had respect in this organization? Take a guess what staff say to me when I ask them that question.
I would guess that what staff mostly say is they want to be listened to.
Yeah. So listen to someone acting on what I say. That's exactly what I always thought it would be. The number one thing, and by the way, I've talked to thousands and thousands and thousands of staff members, all shifts, all different departments. Number one thing they say, somebody knows my name, says hello, and asks me how I'm doing. This is our bar. Okay. Like, this is
Wow.
to strangers on the streets, right? That's the bar that we're dealing with. And so now you might be doing that as a leader. You might say, well, I do that. But then you have to think about, are your other leaders doing it? Because your culture is going to be shaped by that worst behavior that you're tolerating. And I had an organization once I worked with, real high end place, and one of the top leaders, probably the third person in the organization, she said to me, I'll say hello to people, but I'm not asking how they are because I don't really care. And
Wow.
that, yeah. So, and that to me, and and the CEO said to me, that's kind of how she is and whatever. So that's not okay. So that's not okay. So if you are accepting that as behavior from leader and a leader, that is going to be the culture that you're going to get in your organization. And so when we think about some of the things we do, I think it's starting with some of these things, the basic being respect. That is the foundation. And how do we hold each other accountable for it? How do we model the way? And so if you have behaviors where people are disrespectful, I can't begin to tell you how many organizations tell me, and then we measure their culture and we see it, that there's blame here, that people are bullies to each other. It's not okay, right? That is not okay. And I say to people, would you accept that for a resident? Would you accept a resident to be verbally abused? Never. So why would you accept that one of your staff members is going to be verbally abused by another staff member? But they're also responding to the culture in which they're working, right? So if that's acceptable behavior, somebody else is going to see that and know that that's acceptable and do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think this is so. A couple things on this. One of the things that's really hard for me is that I was at, I don't remember, one of the trade shows this fall, and Rachel, who was also there, our social, our creative director, came up to me and she said, "Hey, I want you to come and meet this person who is the marketing director for a vendor company. And it's really important you do this because she thinks you don't like her." And I'm sort of, I don't know, remember ever meeting her. But I'm sure that what happened is that I passed by her once, maybe more than once, and maybe she said hello, or maybe I should have said hello and I didn't, and I felt horrible about it. But it certainly wasn't intentional. But the perception was there of who I was, and honestly, it'd be easy for me to say, "Well, that's her fault," right? But I own that, right? Because I recognize that I have some prominence in the industry, and that in keeping with who I am, what I present myself to be, I've got to work harder at doing that. And so I think but I think the question is, maybe I think most of them wouldn't say, "Well, I don't care." Most of them are just say, "Oh, I get busy and I don't do it." How do you fix that?
The intentionality around it, right? So recognizing the story you just shared repeated in different ways in organizations over and over. I went to this organization once and somebody was telling me like the CEO is such a jerk, and the CEO happened to be a personal friend of mine for years, and I knew the person really well, and I'm thinking this is a really nice guy. Like why this perception? And when I asked some questions, it was he doesn't say hello. His face is down. He's always in his phone. So what's happening? I'm sure running meeting to, I know it because I spoke to him about it, running meeting to meeting, right? You're trying to get one email answered between meetings and so forth. But to a staff member who that might be the only time they see you that day or that week or whatever, if that phone is more important than them in that moment, that's what they're taking back, right? That I'm not respected. And that might sound ridiculous, and it probably does if you're in a leadership role once again. But if you're not, and you're looking for proof that you're important to your leader, and your leader walks by like this and doesn't look up, there's my proof I'm not important in this organization. And so starting and the thing with respect is, if, and I know I'm harping on this, but if you don't have a basic level of respect, if you don't have a basic level of trust, nothing else is possible. So you can have a recognition program in place, but if I don't feel respected and that I trust my leaders and so forth, it feels fake to me. And people are like, I want to do a coaching and mentoring program. But if I say to you, if you don't think I respect you, Steve, and I say, oh, Steve, I want to enroll you in something to really kind of grow you as a person, you're thinking in their head, what are they trying to do? Get rid of me and to replace my job, right? So it's all the other stuff. And that's why when I talk about being strategic and know what's happening in your organization. So to improve retention, it shouldn't be this read a book, great idea, let's try it, or go to a conference, learn something, even if it's from me, right? It might be a great idea, but it might not be what your organization needs right now, which means you're going to spend time and money perhaps implementing something that's going to fall apart quickly.
Yeah, I worry so much. I mean, I haven't heard it so much recently, but I know, and you and I have talked about this before, say 6 or 7 years ago, there was this big idea that the way you solve your staffing challenges was to create a great break room. And break room, and it's not, and then there's nothing wrong with a great break room, right? I mean, a great break room is something you probably should do, but after 6 months, that great break room is just the break room, right?
Yeah.
And sort of the same thing with employee awards kinds of programs, right? They kind of are fun for a few months, but pretty soon they actually become, if you will, become part of the compensation package, and they don't do anything. But how are you doing today? What can I do to make your life better? How can I make your job better? Has it's cheaper and simple. But here's the question I have. This story you told about the person who walked in and said, well, I don't care.
Yeah.
How do you fix? I mean, can you fake that?
You have to care. I always think, Steve, of the founder of the Ritz-Carlton that we had the opportunity to meet a few years ago. And that, we spent the whole day with him, and he opened the conversation. The founder of the Ritz-Carlton, like one of the greatest cultures in the world. And he opened the conversation by saying, I love my employees. I love all my employees. And if you can't love your employees, you don't belong in leadership. Now, someone might laugh at that and say that's woo-woo and that's out there and so forth. But, maybe love's a strong word for some people. But this sense of caring about people, you can't fake it. But if you don't care about people, I would question why you're even in leadership, quite frankly. It's not a role that you can just kind of like pretend, because people are going to see through that. And then everything you do feels fake, right? Everything that you do and try feels fake. So we're going to do this party and this whatever program and so forth. None of it feels sincere if we don't have that as a basis. So, I tell leaders a simple thing, right? Obviously, hello, asking people how they are, right? Connecting with people as you walk around. Simple. Spend some time. I mean, if you could spend a half a day, awesome. You could spend a full day, great. You could spend an hour. Go watch someone doing their job and help them out with that job and see what that's like. So if you're in a C-suite position, whatever position you're in, you might be a department head or whatever, right? Some people have to do this right now because they don't have enough staff. But if you're in a position that has not done that, consider doing that. Go observe somebody. It's like undercover boss, but without the undercover part. And I've had CEOs do that and come back to me, and they're just like nonstop ideas from one person half a day. But because they're having that experience of, I had no idea this is what that person's dealing with. And then what does that feel like to that staff member, right? To know that somebody cared enough to really want to know their job on that deep of a level. It really says to them, I'm important to this organization. And then, of course, everybody else knows that's happening too, right? It's not just that one person that's impacting. Everybody else is hearing the story that the CEO or whomever is helping this particular person out.
Well, and I think one of the things that I see is that I think that there's this perception by a leader that these people aren't very lovable. Oh, wait a minute. I want to say one other thing. I often tell my team I love them, and I do love them. And so I want to say that, and maybe it's a little cheesy and strong, but I mean, we're like, Adam Grant says you shouldn't call your team like family, but I think the family is, when it's done right, it's not the same as necessarily your biological family, though in some cases we might actually be less dysfunctional than your real family, right? So I think I think that's terrific. But so that person that said that, did they get fired? Can they be rehabilitated? Can you? What
Well,
happened?
you want to know how that story ended? So they didn't lose their job. They had no interest in getting better. If I was in the role to let them go, I would have let them go, because what happened eventually was, when people don't feel listened to and heard, then they wind up saying, well, I'm not telling anybody anything. And so they didn't, and they didn't report something that they should have reported, which wound up with the Department of Health living in that organization for about a month, because something not great happened in that organization and wasn't reported because nobody felt comfortable speaking up, because people didn't feel respected. And so while it seems like a silly thing, right? Just that sense of, respect, hello, how are you, and so forth, that feeling that people had, which is nobody cared. And I've had people say this to me: they want to keep me in the dark like a mushroom, then I'll keep them in the dark and they won't know anything going on either. And so, it becomes like a battle of wills, and guess who winds up losing in the end? The organization, right? And the people living there, and really the people working there too. So that's how that story ended up. So they wound up losing their job, but because it was so much long, so much longer, there was a ton of damage that was done.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's
and
not
so
out their story.
yeah, and this is such an important story to tell, Denise, because I see so many senior living organizations out there right now that are struggling with both occupancy and staffing, and I think they're completely tied together. If you get your staffing right, your occupancy will take care of itself. Honestly, it really will.
Yeah,
And
to show it.
yeah, and so what's just crazy making to me is things aren't going well, and instead of doing something different, doing anything different, trying some experiments, they just, I don't know, they're praying, they're hoping that there's going to be this age wave. There's more than one senior living organization that just talks all the time about how demographics are going to fix all their woes, and I don't believe it.
Yeah, and to your point of occupancy and staffing and so forth. Well, first of all, you have to have enough staff to take care of people. So there's a lot of organizations right now that can't have new people move in because they don't have enough staff to care for them, right? So there's that piece of it. But beyond that, we did, this is fascinating. This is a white paper that's actually on our website. We worked with, and think about this. This is one organization, okay? One organization, multiple sites. And we measured the culture of the overall organization and at their specific sites. And what we found was, no surprise, but it's never been studied before, but now we know, their sites with the strongest cultures had on average 94% occupancy. The weakest cultures that they had, same company, the weakest cultures that they had by site, guess what the average occupancy was at the weakest? Strongest was 94%.
83.
66. 66% to 94% occupancy, the same company. That is what happens when you don't have a strategic approach to culture and everybody's doing their own thing. And God bless them, because they said, we need to do something, right? They recognize it and they want to do something. But when you don't have a strategic approach to culture and you're just doing kind of your own thing, right? Everyone's doing whatever they want. That's occupancy. Turnover in and this is our clients, strongest cultures, best culture scores, the strongest cultures that we know, their turnover is 38% lower than the weakest cultures. So I tell people 38%. So if you're lowering your turnover by 38%, you are lowering your recruitment issues by 38%, right? That's more than a third less people you have to hire. That's your agency going down by a third. That's your overtime going down by the third. And by the way, there's also a person behind all that, right? That's a resident seeing the same face, right? More often.
Yeah. Well, I would say the other thing is, and we don't often maybe think about it or talk about it, but we should, is imagine that you are not just the same face, but just imagine that you are a resident in a building that's a 66% occupancy. You know that they're cutting corners, that everybody is in this panic mode. It becomes this downward spiral, right? And so when I hear people say, well, I can't pay more money, or I can't treat my people better because of money, the cost of doing it, I just, what's the cost of not doing it? I think that is often not looked at.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not. And I'll tell you, it's fascinating to me because people will call sometimes and say, like, I need your help. Our turnover is awful. And I'll say, well, what's your turnover rate? Awful. Could you define awful? It's really bad. So they don't even know what the number they're working with is, right? And we don't even have that data to work with, right? And so knowing the data behind this, knowing what is important to your specific organization, excuse me, and even each specific site, if you're in a multi-site organization, is so important. So this whole approach becomes strategic, not throw it at the wall and hope it sticks. And we're just going to quote unquote fix culture, right? You don't randomly fix culture. You're using a strategic approach to it. And so we want to use that same approach that you would use for anything, right? You wouldn't build a new campus, you wouldn't start a new product line, service line without being strategic about it. And we really need to use that same approach to culture and ultimately recruitment and retention.
Cool. So first thing is, you've got some resources available for our audience today.
Yes.
You want
Yes.
to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. The fully staffed.
Yes.
Yeah. So fully staffed is, I like to call it Netflix for recruitment and retention. It is an on-demand program, and we have done a ton of research. This is all research-based. I'm a nerd at heart. And we looked at what are the top desired cultures have in common. So when we survey staff and we ask them their dream state, their desired culture state, what values or behaviors would you see in this organization if it was performing at its best? We look for those themes, and each month we focus on a different one of those. Okay, so we've done recognition, we've done respect, we've done open communication. This month is employee fulfillment. We've had diversity, we have belonging coming up, and so forth. So each month we focus on a different topic. We tell people 10 minutes a day. We know that people do not have any extra time. You don't have time to sit down for an hour. So each month we have 10 minutes, or each day we ask you to spend just 10 minutes. Watch 10 minutes of a video in there. They're short videos. Next day, implement for 10 minutes. And next day, implement 10. And we even have, I have some of them printed up today for you. We even have each month 4 10-minute masteries, we call them, things that take 10 minutes or less. And you could sit down as a team too and say, like, hey, Steve, did you, have that conversation with the people that you're supposed to have the conversation with? Did you schedule that time to do that with your team, right? You can talk as a leadership team for accountability around what you are learning. So the link for fully staffed, we're going to pop it up there for you. Every month there's 2 hours of new content in there, and there's actually even open office hours, so you can call up and have a culture consultant help you one-on-one, instead of paying for a retainer or a full day of consulting, as many of our clients do. You can call up as part of that and get some of that open office hour times with us each month. Like Carly said, it's an impact on KPIs. So we also have a coupon code that coupon code is your name, Steve.
So, it is.
Steve, if you put Steve's name in, that gets you a free month. So if you sign up for a year-long membership, you already get a free month, and it's $39 a month. It's going up next month, but it's $39 a month right now. And if you sign up for a year, you get a free month. If you put Steve's name in the coupon code, you get another free month. And that is good for a week. So the December 21st, that expires.
Yep.
No.
So you guys should all do that. And so the first thing you should do is sign up for that. Secondly,
I'll just share real quick. There's a money back guarantee. Like, that's how strongly we feel about it. There's a 30-day money back guarantee. So you can go in there, look at stuff, and if it's no help to you, there's a money back guarantee.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you. I'm going to give one, and I'm going to ask you to give one. Let's see if we can come up with a list of 5. Five
Okay.
things that I can do tomorrow so it's Friday, so it's too late. Well, so Zoom, it's too late. Five things we could do to lead better on Monday. And as you know, you helped me put together a list of 101 things you can do to lead better. I'm going to give you my first one. I'm going to steal it from you because I've already been accused of doing that once from you. But the first thing you need to do is that every one of you has somebody in your organization that is dragging your whole organization down, and you should go fire them. I'm actually going to tell you that I actually don't have anybody like that in my organization because this is a really high value for me. But every time I do a keynote and I talk about this list and I go, every one of you has somebody you need to fire. I've never actually had anybody come up and challenge me. Everybody, I see these heads nod because as soon as I say that, they actually see that person's face or their name in their head. They know who it is. It will transform your organization. So now we got to come up with 4 more things.
Yeah. So I would say one of the things intentionally as you walk around, be interacting with people. I'm a extreme extrovert. I did an extra test. It was like 99% out of 100, right? But to at least look people in the eye and say hello to them. If you're more introverted, right? To at least start with that and intentionally do that as you're walking around. It adds no extra time to your day, and you would not believe the impact it has on people. I'm telling you, the stories I've heard over the years, you can't believe the impact that has on people. So that's one other thing that I would share. Is it your turn or you want me to do another one?
I'll go next. I'm going to actually sort of piggyback on that. So if you're not an extreme extrovert like Denise, I sort of live sometimes in the world of extrovert and sometimes in the world of introvert. Go just sit down and have a one-on-one conversation with somebody. See somebody at lunch. Can I join you? Have a one-on-one. Even introverts tend to be pretty good on the small. It's not introverts don't hate people. They just don't like big crowds and they don't like new people. But so figure out a style that works for you. Go for another one. I'm gonna call that 2.
Okay. So walk around and look for good things to point out, positive things. So when I was an administrator, someone once said to me, Denise, all you do is see the bad. And I was like, what? And I realized as I was walking around, I would say, this is not done and that's not done. And, I wasn't a scream and yell kind of person, but it was still picking out all the stuff that was wrong. And so go around and put 10 minutes in your calendar. Once again, it could be while you're already walking around. You don't have to add any extra time in. Pick out good things that you want to see more of. Maybe it's even interactions between staff. Maybe teamwork is something that you want to focus on the organization. If you see people having good teamwork, point it out to them and recognize that for them. So point that out for them.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. I'm going to just look like this is how this is going to go, right? So I would just add to that. Capture these as stories, tell stories, and talk in terms of, you clean the carpet great today is nice. You had that conversation with Mrs. Jones, and in having that conversation, I could see this big smile on her face, and you made her life better. And that's what and so I would add to this, tie this to your core values. So in our organization, we're all about making the lives of people who live and work in senior living better. And so almost ad nauseum with my team, we talk about how we are doing that. We get emails from people, we talk about it, I hear stories, and we talk about it and tie those into your values and how important that is.
And it's that sense of, with this, once again, taking advantage of this purpose-driven economy that we are in, and that people want purpose in their work. So I love this sense of, I read this sometimes, and I just love that, talking about culture should be like, enough already. Enough with the values and the mission and the vision and the purpose. I get it, right? That's how much people should be hearing about your mission, values, vision, and purpose, right? And even when they say that, you're going to still keep on talking about it. But typically, right, that's not what's happening in organizations. So in any way, maybe it's during an interview process, maybe it's on orientation, maybe it's on onboarding. Maybe it's in the conversation you're having with somebody in the break room or while you're walking around. Maybe it's with your leadership team. Maybe all the above. Constantly connecting people's work back to the purpose, right? So somebody in the business office that might not be forward facing and with the people that you serve, do they know the connection of keeping your organization running and funded so that you can do the work that you do for residents, right? Connecting that for maybe I'm a pot washer. Right. And I love the story. Someone told me years ago they were talking to someone who was washing pots, and the person said to them, when I'm washing them, I'm seeing the resident's face smiling at the bottom of the pot who's eating the food that came out of it. Right. That's purpose. And so, how do we get purpose connected to every single job in the organization and continually talking about that through your vision, mission, purpose, values, whatever you have or don't have even in your organization. If you don't have those established, that's okay. But talking about the greater good of the work that they're doing.
Yeah, and I just think that this tying it in. The one other thing I would add about mission statements is I think too often the mission statements are about the organization or about the leader and not the people. And you really need I actually call it a purpose statement rather than a mission statement, as I use this as part of a keynote I do. And I want you to have, so I, as a leader of senior living Foresight, my goal is to make the lives of people who live and work in senior living better. But I want that to be the goal for every single person who is a part of my organization, the full-time people, the part-time people, the volunteer people, the fan people, everybody, and so I want them to own that. So if you walk up to one of my teams and say, what is it do you guys do? I want it to be their thinking is, we make the lives of people who live and work in senior living better. And then you might go on to sort of the details of how we do that. But when you start doing that, it'll transform your organization. People will love coming to work every day. So get Denise's program.
Fully staffed.
Fully staffed. It will transform your organization. I don't even know how you can afford to not do it. That's all I'm saying. So, Denise, thank you very much for joining us today. We are out of time. I want to say, Leanne, who's in the background, who's producing today for Jada, who normally produces, who I always forget to say thank you. So I'm going to name Jada as part of my team. You're doing an amazing job. And with that, we are out of here. I just wish every one of you a Merry Christmas. We're doing something next week. Before Christmas, I don't even know exactly what it is, but Leanne and Rachel and Rebecca and the whole team and Jada have something crazy fun cooked up. So, Denise, thank you again.
See you, Steve.